Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome from wherever you are joining us here today on USA Global TV and radio. It's a delight to have you with us. So I'm KIM-ADELE. I'm the host of today's show, which is called Authentic Achievements. And Authentic Achievements has been on USA Global TV since the beginning. And it was designed around sharing people's authentic journey to success. And I am absolutely thrilled to today be joined by the fabulous Kendra Dodd. So let me tell you a little bit about Kendra before we welcome her out here onto the show. So Kendra's dynamic enthusiasm for learning is passed along to everyone she meets. She's passionate about challenging herself and others to think outside of their own comfort zones so they can grow. Kendra's background in human resources includes participation in national level pilot programs and initiatives designed to foster diversity and inclusion in the workplace. She has over 20 years experience in organizational strategies, especially those involving employee engagement. Among Kendra's key achievements are certifications as a DDI, which is a Development and Dimensions International Trainer, and an SPHR, which is a Senior Professional Human Resources, a university adjunct instructor, a master's degree in Human Resources Development, and a life and career coach. Kendra's personal journey of living in several states across the US, opening her home to international cultural exchange students, and her unique perspective of growing up in the South as a child of one of the first Black families in law enforcement, leads her to have a balanced approach to life's challenges and a wealth of experience and insight that she can share with us today. So Kendra, welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad to be here today. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's an absolute delight. And what a journey you've had already. Could you share with us a little bit more about your journey so far, please?
Oh, no, thank you. Thank you for asking. I think, within my journey, it's not over, and I never thought I would be. So a lot of people ask within my travels, if you look at the United States map, I've lived as south as Georgia. So that's really south on the map. And then you can go up. And then I literally go all the way across the United States, all the way to the far west. And I lived in Washington State, Oregon, and then you moved over to what they call the mountain region. So it's kind of more to the left, right? I lived in Utah. And then now I'm in the middle of the state. I'm in Minnesota. And so this was all within my adult life.
Wow.
So if we think about this, it's not that I had to, evolve or transform within my formative years. I had to then reprogram myself to think differently during my adult years. And I think that's what we have to think about, is that there's some pros and cons, right? During your formative years, you grow and have a broad perspective. So I had to break learnings that I had as a young adult of what things I thought they were, how they should be. But also, like you mentioned, I lived in a glass bubble in a small town that almost everyone knew of me or kind of who I was. And this was before social media, right? This is in the 70s and 80s. And so I think that journey has been very unique of who am I, not who people say I am, in my formative years. And then what do I believe in my young adult years? And then helping others have that same experience.
Oh, wow. I love that. Because we do, don't we? We build I always liken it to our operating system. We build our beliefs and our operating system when we're in our formative years. And then unless we go back and look at it, and unless we question and be curious with ourselves about, is that still working for us? We can end up running on an outdated operating system, which we wouldn't do, would we? We wouldn't do it with our computers. We wouldn't do it with our phones. And yet we do it with ourselves unless we take a moment to kind of really look at it and go, is that right? Is that serving me? Is there a different way of looking at that, of addressing that? And I know certainly in my 40s, I kind of went back and started the work at, is that still right? Is that really what I want to think? Is there an alternative way that's going to work better? And I love that you get people to challenge that comfort zone piece, because it is a challenge, isn't it? To even start the work that says, I'm going to really question whether or not this is still what I want to believe, or is there something else? So how do you help people start that journey?
I would say first with baby steps. Everyone has a threshold, because if you go too far, you got to know when to stop. Because if you go too far within that journey, people then cannot balance. They have to find a new footing to a new foundation. So I start with maybe the first thing. And so I call it, I don't know if you have speed bumps in where you are. And what they are is they're little mounds within concrete or within a road structure that makes someone slows down. And so I try to look for those identifications that slow people down within their own thought process, right? So we have our own self-limiting beliefs, and then I question those beliefs, and then we dig from there of where could that come from within that belief system, and we dig there. And I try not to go too far. I try to let them live within that system, because if you go too far and continue to look for more and more, then they'll start questioning, is everything a lie in my life? And I don't want them to feel that way. I want them to little by little reassess, because then it creates, once they build that new foundation and they live in that foundation, then they'll realize this is okay. And then it's okay then to go outside your comfort zone again. And I say, so I try to find what's that one thing that's hindering them in the now of being successful. And then we work on it. And then we continue to work on those limiting beliefs that we encounter during my coaching.
Oh, fab. I love that, because you're right. You don't want to, we want to move out of our comfort zones, but we don't want to go all the way to panic, do we? It's like, it's how do we get out of comfort into challenge, but not in a position of panic that I'm then like, it's all too much. Because then we retreat, don't we? It's like, that's just too scary. I'm gonna pull it all the way back. So I love that you're helping them focus on the, what's the biggest speed bump that's impacting you today? So let's move that one first, and give you a chance to get comfortable that that's moved before we move to the next one, so that I guess you're helping them expand their comfort zone rather than smashing it out of the way. Would that be fair?
Yes, they'll be fair. One of the things that I say to my clients a lot is that people don't change. And I know that's alarming, but they don't. People transform. And so if you think of it as a process instead of this quick end destination, that it's a marathon, not a sprint, and getting there, that it then gives them self-grace for themselves, that it's okay when they think that they're failing and they're not. That is part of the growth. And so I say that a lot. I was like, remember, people don't change, we transform. And I think that's something that I help them realize, is that this is a process and this is a journey, and it's okay, because you're learning from it regardless. There's never failure.
Oh, I love that, because you're right. I've not thought of it that way in those words, but it is the constant transformation, isn't it? It's the continuous improvements. It's the little steps. I was chatting with somebody on my other show actually just yesterday, and she said something that I really liked, which I think fits in here, is you've got to start to learn that failure is just the first instance of learning. And I was like, oh, I really like that, actually, because it's just that, it's that next iteration, isn't it? It's like, it's not actually a failure, you're growing as part of that, and actually that is a valid part of your learning journey, isn't it? It won't always go swimmingly, it won't always go to plan, much as we'd love it to.
Right.
Life sometimes throws the odd plot twist, doesn't it, to just keep us on our toes.
It does. I like that. I like when she said the initial and the first stage. It becomes failure when we stop at that stage, right? And we stay within that movement, and we don't see whatever that growth, and then that becomes stagnation, right? If you think of moving water, the most successful and healthy moving water is to keep moving, right? When it becomes stagnant, that's when it becomes unhealthy, right? It becomes bacteria, growth, other things will happen. That's how life happens to you. When you stop moving, right? You have to live with life.
Yeah, I love that. And you so do. And I often say, and anyone who's watched before will probably be bored of me saying this, but I've worked out life only really makes sense in the rearview mirror. So when you're in it, it doesn't always make a huge amount of sense. But when you look back at it, you're like, right. So that's what that was trying to teach me, or that's what I needed to learn, or that's why that experience happened. And so I've started to, when I'm in the moment, just go with the, everything's a lesson, a blessing, or both. If I don't feel blessed, I should look for the lesson. And the blessing probably is wrapped up nicely in a bow right inside that lesson, because it is about that constant movement, isn't it? Is the keeping the a friend of mine uses a quote that I love. She said, progress beats perfection every time. I love that. You know, if as long as we keep progressing, we will get there a lot faster than if we try and be perfect, because perfect doesn't work, does it?
No, no. And I'm a recovering perfectionist, so I continue to have to fight through that struggle on a regular basis, and where that is, and that it's okay. And so I think I have a creative nature, and so that's always trying to get to some idea, and just being okay in the moment, like you said earlier.
Yeah, and it is. I'm like you. I am a recovering perfectionist. I've now got myself in a place where I'm perfectly imperfect. So my imperfection is my perfection. And I can be proud of that because I'm perfect at being imperfect. It's like, brilliant. Go me. So I can still develop, and I can still learn, and I can still grow, but I no longer carry the hair shirt around that I'm not perfect in every way, because I found, and I don't know if this resonates, I found that was the thing that was holding me back the most. I wouldn't take action and I wouldn't take risk unless I could be certain I could be perfect at it, which you're just not going to achieve. And so you just, to your point, you stagnate, and then you look around and go, is this the life I really want? Is this the one that's bringing me joy? Or is it actually that the fear of taking the risk is causing me more problems than actually the downside of taking the risk and it going horribly wrong would really give me? Sometimes we need to change that perspective, don't we?
Yes, very much so. And the idea, and I think, you know, within the concept of perspective, I think it's very important that is when I've been in sessions or with people, because I work with individuals and I can work with teams and organizations, is that there's this idea that I'm trying to change them.
Yeah.
And it's not, it's just broadening the knowledge you already have. I mean, you can't change anyone and their ideas, but you can broaden if you're willing, you know, to be coachable or to understand that it broadens that perspective. It doesn't really change it, you know, into the ideas of that. And I think once you realize that I'm not trying to change you, right? That's not what we're trying to do, but I'm trying to open your mindset that everyone maybe isn't you or see things your way. And that can be challenging.
Yeah, I totally get that. It is that, you know, because people don't like to be wrong. So actually, if you need to change me, then that means I was wrong, and I don't like to be wrong. And you want me to self-select to tell people I'm wrong and to change. Whereas, to your point, if you broaden the perspective, and I remember seeing, I think it was Bob Proctor once shared this, and it stuck in my mind. It was like, actually, we live in a world of polarity. For every up, there's a down. For every left, there's a right. So it's not saying what you're saying is wrong. It's saying you've not seen the other side. So it's how do we give you both sides? Because he in the one that I saw, he holds up a book and he shares, he's like, if I said there was nothing written on the cover of the book, would I be right or wrong? And there's really clearly something written on the book, and we're like, yeah, you're wrong. He said, if I insisted there is nothing on the book, would I be right or wrong? And you're like, you're wrong, clearly. Loser. And then he turns the book around to show you the side he can see, and there's nothing written on the side he can see. And he said it really worked for me because it was a real visual. That was like, it's just a matter of perspective. So actually, we're widening your perspective. We're not changing who you are, but giving you more information allows you to decide if you want to grow that perspective and see things slightly differently. And for me, it was a really simple but really powerful way of getting you to realize, yeah, you were right on the side you could see, but just because I'm right doesn't make you wrong, and just because you're right doesn't make me wrong. We may have a different perspective. Once we understand the different perspective, we're better able to work with it. And that's always struck me, particularly in that sort of diversity and inclusion piece. It's in how do we broaden that perspective so that we can better understand the similarities and work with those. But you do so much in that. How do we help people to start to go on that journey?
You know, sometimes just, I don't think people realize that. I think one of the things is I try to make it as basic. One of the things I say is I take a holistic approach. And So I've been in businesses and I've had some businesses tell me, well, why do you talk personal life? Why do you talk about, make references to your home or relationships? Because that's most dear to us,
Yeah.
right? That's the one in which it causes more cost of what's important to me. And so we have to realize too, with the concept of emotion and that's where you're going to have the change. And then if you have impact in your home, then you can transfer that's easily within your workplace. And so that's what I try to do is I really bring, when I come, a holistic approach, and in those reflections, I'll say, okay, we can reflect of what's your most challenging relationship overall, not in the workplace. Your most challenging relationship that you may have right now may be with your significant other. It may be with your partner. It may be with your spouse. It may be with your child. It may be with your mother-in-law. Who knows? And then if they can work on that and find a change, then they can work on other things. So to silo life, I think, is wrong to me because we can't leave parts of us at the door. And so that is one of the things that I really, really talk about is I give holistic perspectives and references in different time frames for people. So I talk about my personal life a little bit, not, being personal, but the things that happen and people can relate to that better sometime than in a culture workplace situation. So that's one of the techniques I use is I try to really allow people to bring their full self to the training, to the examples, to the coaching in which I provide. And then I try to, really put light of it. I give examples. Sometimes it's easier to see someone else in a situation than yourselves, and then you can reflect. So I give a lot of case studies or let me tell you the situation. Can I tell you, how do you see that? And it's a lot easier to critique outside of yourself than yourself.
I love that. It's so true. And I've always thought it was really weird when people say, leave your problems at the door. And it's like, well, neuroscientifically proven, our emotional brain responds 24 times faster than our thinking brain. So by the time the emotions come, before I've had the thought to go, oh, you were supposed to stay at the door. I wasn't supposed to bring you in. So unless they get comfortable with that, then we've got challenges. But the other bit that I love, and for me, I've always thought this would be the leveler, that the one thing that connects us all, irrelevant of our age, our race, our gender, our culture, is we teach and we learn through stories. So actually, when we share the stories, that's one of the reasons I started this show, was the more we can share each other's stories, the more we can learn through other people's lived experience. And to your point, we can see ourselves in parts of that story, even if we can't see ourselves in all of it. And it helps us, therefore, connect better. And when we connect better, we have more opportunity to learn and grow together, don't we? And that works so well in organizations. But actually, what I find, and it sounds like you're absolutely finding this from the work you do, is actually when you help them grow holistically, the impact isn't just on what you've done within that organization, it's in what you've done for that person's life in general. And the things that we struggle with often at work, the difficult relationships we have there, are very often because they remind us so much of the difficult relationships we're having outside of work, and therefore they automatically attach the same emotional impact. Would you say that's fair?
Oh, absolutely. I think that's spot on of where I'm seeing challenges and that I like to negotiate. It doesn't mean that we share all of that. It means that if we find that connection, it becomes an easier path to resolution and resolve.
Yeah.
Right. Like you said, and finding that emotion. And that's where I find it best. There's a company called Honest Company. I was on LinkedIn today and I forgot her title. She's in the C-suite. And she was talking about the movie Inside Out, the cartoon. And it's the next phase. And she was talking about, and I was like, it's so good to hear someone that's an executive to say, we all have feelings and it's okay. And how to ask those feelings of where they come from, I think is very, very important. So to see someone at her level and caliber saying it's okay to feel and to have those emotions, because the more that you address them, the easier it's actually to get through them. Suppressing them actually makes them sustain within your body and you're not able to be productive. And so it's just good to see someone that's a leader that's moving forward in that.
Oh, I love that. I must admit, for years when I worked in corporate life, And even now when I go with clients, one of my number one questions I ask people is, how does it feel to be here? Because you have to think with all of your senses. You can't just come up with the stock answer. And it's amazing how much that unlocks where the real problems are. And how disconnected maybe they are to what the vision and the mission is supposed to be, because that's not how it's showing up. It might be what you've said on the wall, but it's not how it feels to work around here. And it gives people that safe space to actually share the wider bits, which are usually where the gold is. It's like, right, that's the bit that's the bit we just need to expand on. That's the bit that we can, find an alternate perspective of and see if there's a different way of us moving it. Whereas if we stick in the, in the whole part of emotions are messy, and emotions are messy. I remember being in one boardroom, and we were about to do a big redundancy program, and it was the night before, and the board sat there and went, "Kim, are we ready?" And I went, "Ready as we'll ever be." And they did look horrified, I'll be honest. What do you mean ready as we'll ever be? Do we need to stop it? Do we need to pull it back? Do we need to do something different? I said, no, what I mean by that is I've planned for everything I can possibly plan for, apart from tomorrow we are going to tell 1,800 people that their jobs are at risk. And I have no way of knowing what that piece of information, when added to whatever's going on in their world already, is going to do. As in, my number one leadership lesson was, you have to get comfortable with the uncomfortable. People are messy and they're full of emotions, and they won't follow the plan because you've not given them the plan. They've not got the manual and handbook that says, oh, I'm not supposed to do this and I'm not supposed to do that. They are messy, complex individuals. And as leaders, until we get comfortable with that uncomfortable, we're going to constantly find ourselves in a position of fear, constantly fearful of what's going to happen next. Is that something you've seen?
Yes. I had a training session with a medical, a healthcare field. I had a lunch and learn Tuesday, and it was about negativity. They were having this challenge, and we talked about fear. And part of fear is like what you said it backwards. I started with fear, and then we talked about the different things of fear. And I said, it's change. Right underneath that is because you don't know what's going to happen next. Like, people are messy. You don't know. And the person had a really hard time. She was like, how is fear connected to change? And I said, well, name a fear. And, and it was a really good discussion of that's where the heart. She's like, what if you're fearful that the client will, abuse you or will bully you? And I said, because you don't know what's going to happen next. You're not in control. And so it has to do with change or control, that I think that's a lot to do with fear. People are scared of heights because they don't know what could happen. Could they fall? People are scared to go outside of their comfort zone because they don't know what's next. And so that's how people are in bad relationships, and they continue, or they might get out of a relationship and end up in that same relationship because they at least know what the potential outcome will be and the probability than if they really did change. There's better controls there.
I love that. It's kind of almost that better the devil you know, isn't it? And it's like, well,
Yes.
no, not really. But you can get stuck into that. And I did a talk of this when I did my TEDx, which was, the thing that fascinates me is the thing that we are fearful of hasn't happened. We've imagined it. We've had to think about what that could be. And the thing we're hopeful for also hasn't happened yet. We've also had to imagine it. And they're imagined in exactly the same brain. So
Right.
them is more credible, more likely. And yet we choose, and it is a choice, we choose to give more credibility to the fearful of, and use that as a reason to take a chance. Right. And yet it all becomes a matter of our risk appetite, doesn't it? We can expand our risk appetite, and then we can take a better risk, but we have a better control. And for me, one of the things that I've worked with people on is, how do we understand your current risk appetite, and then how do we look whether or not we're willing to expand that, and what feels an acceptable expansion of that risk appetite, and what feels like, no, that fills me with fear. So like I'm kind of rocking on the sofa. You cannot include me anymore. Kind of almost helping them understand that that's all we're really talking about is understanding your risk appetite and seeing where you are comfortable to expand it.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I'm licensed. There's different personality assessments, and I'm licensed in one that I like, right? Of one that I think it's because it's geared towards leadership and teams. But they talk about culture, and they said there's two paradoxes when it comes to building a culture, and that has to do with support, and then it has to do with challenge.
Yeah.
And all of us want to be challenged because actually challenge builds trust. Right. If you challenge me, it means that you trust me. And so, but support. So when I do fail and you challenge me, do I support you in that? And so it's very interesting with those two dynamics of then what do you create for a person? So sometimes people like to be challenged, and the easier that it becomes acceptable when they don't meet the expectation, the more then they're okay with being challenged. So it's a very interesting dichotomy of those two factors that have been studied of challenge and support.
Oh, I love that, because I think that's true. If we think about, I often use this example, but if I had to wake up tomorrow and I had to learn how to walk or talk or run or jump or skip, I'd be overwhelmed. I think we all would be a bit overwhelmed. And yet at our most vulnerable, we did it. And that really intrigued me. I was like, how is that? When I watched my little girl, I mean, she's 7.5 now, but when I watched her learning to walk, I was really intrigued. And it came to me that actually, and I think it fits with your kind of like challenge and support, is I believe one of the things why children learn to walk is down to one thing in two parts, which is belief. So your child believes they can do it because you can do it, because your children think they're just like you. So, well, you can do it. So I'm just going to keep going because I can get there. So they've got their own belief. But then we add our belief, because I've yet to see a child learn to walk that doesn't have at least one adult going, come on, you've got this. You're so close. Keep going. It doesn't matter how many times they fall on that padded little nappy, they get back up and give it another try. And yet we stop doing that as adults. And for me, that was one of the things as leaders, I think we've got a great gift to give, which is when we ask somebody to do something, we do it because we believe they're going to be successful. Because if not, they look silly and we look silly because we trusted them to do it. So imagining that we all have those moments of doubt, we all have those moments where we're feeling the challenge, but do I know I've got the support? One of the things I think we can do is share with them why we believe they're going to be successful. So I want you to do this because I believe that you are going to be super successful because of X, Y, and Z. So that you kind of give them the challenge and immediately give them the first line of support, which is why you're asking them. Do you think something like that might help kind of bridge some of that dichotomy of you wanting to do the challenge, but you wanting them to feel the safety net before they leap?
Yes, I think one of the number one issues of conflict or misunderstandings is communication, right? Communicating, like you said, explaining yourself. I just wrote about that in a piece that I, just in my post on LinkedIn of, it was talking about one singular words of the more I explain myself, and then also talk about my intentions instead of giving someone direction, saying, this is why, right? The reason behind it, people will then understand you better, which leads to and yields a higher connection. But there's something else that you said when you were talking about your daughter walking that I thought it was very interesting. Here in the States, I don't know how it is for you, the whole concept of diversity, equity, inclusion is being attacked. They're saying it's not needed. But one of the things you said is that she sees you doing it. And so this is where I'll also say that representation does matter, right? To see a woman like, oh, you can be an astronaut, but I've never seen a woman do it. So can I? I think that having representation in the workplace does matter. And that's a prime example of you can tell someone you can believe it, but sometimes you have to see it. I was in a workplace one time before, and I said, one of my highest skills is collaboration. And they said, oh, we're highly collaborative. And I wasn't there long that I would say, no, they really weren't. And she said, I thought we were, and you helped me see a different way. I didn't know what collaboration fully was until you came. And so you have to see someone do it, but sometimes see someone that is like you, that it is achievable. And you just make me think about that a little bit of, yes, I think explaining why, but also leading to representation. I think it does matter for people to believe that they can as well.
Yeah, I completely agree, because I think we've got to, we have to play to all of our senses, and we know that people, we all have a natural learning style. And
Right.
it tends to fall down into, we're either kinesthetics, or we feel, felt, found, we're visual or auditory. So we've got to be able to see it, hear it, feel it, for it to really make sure it hits everybody. And you're right, that representation piece really works. One of my massive learnings was that, Scarlett isn't going to learn by just what I say and what I do. She's going to also learn by how I am. So actually, how I show up in the world. And you hear them, I took on the school run on the walk back, and you hear them, they come out with phrases that you use all of the time, totally in context, totally on the money. And you're like, oh my goodness, they're like little sponges. You've got to be. But I believe the same is true in your workforce, in people that work with you. They start to emulate the way that their leader is being. And, and it's not just what we say and what we do, it's what we allow others to say and do that we let go unchecked, that drives our culture. And for me, and it sounds like that's kind of come out in a lot of what you're doing, is that people can, I had one boss who was the nicest man in the history of the world, so lovely, so supportive, but he allowed other people in his team to be bullies. So nobody believed that he had an inclusive culture, because if you did, you'd hold these people to account. And so they're undermining what you're putting out there, because you've got to set the bar and then hold people to accountability of the bar that you've collectively agreed. And I think that it almost it's the unconscious undoing that I see cause problems in organizations. Is that something you've seen?
Yes, absolutely. I think making the unconscious conscious, right? How do you do that? What comes naturally to you? And then, it's kind of the old adage, is our leaders born or made, right? And really it's both. We are nurtured to a certain degree of environments in which we are familiar with, but also we have the capability, if we're willing, to learn how to be a better leader, if we allow open feedback, dialogue, communication. And so it's both. You can have someone that's naturally, but if someone lends, like what we talked about before, and is not willing to change, then a leader that didn't have any leadership experience could exceed that person, because they're willing to learn and become a better leader in time. And so, yes, I see that. But the thing is, I think in that conscious or unconscious, or do people feel safe enough to speak up and for their voice to be heard?
Yeah.
And what type of culture are we providing where that feedback can be given?
Yeah, that's so important, isn't it? Because if we don't feel a level of safety, then back to our risk aversion piece, we're going to go, I'll just say nothing. I'll think it. It will continue to shape my perspective of what's going on here, but I don't feel that I can make any adjustments to it. That's one of the hardest things for an organization, isn't it? Because if people aren't sharing with you where you're getting it wrong, they will eventually let you know by voting with their feet. But at that point, it's a little bit too late. I think for me, one statistic that I heard, and it's always resonated, which is 57% of people leave their leader, not the organization. And that one, when I was being the actual leader versus helping leaders, always resonated. It was like, if I lose anybody, it's because I have to look inward at what am I doing or not doing, or being or not being, that has meant that they don't want to be here. Now, if that was a positive loss, as in, they might not have been the best fit for the organization, then that's okay. But if it was a negative loss, as in they were real talent, you've got to look inward, because the rest of the organization's looking at you, and they know that. People leave for that reason. So, but I don't know how much we proactively encourage early leaders to always look internal first at what am I doing or saying that might be influencing the outcome that I'm getting?
Yeah, I think what's really hard because that's what I do for a living, that I didn't realize how challenging it is on a regular for individuals.
Yeah.
When I wrote my book and did my study and research, you have people read it. They're called beta readers, right? That's to give you feedback. And one of the people that I chose a variety of different backgrounds and experience. And one of the feedback I received of someone that was very read. She read more books than I probably have. She's an avid reader. And she said, well, it's a kind of a self-reflective book. And she said, I liked your stories better. Why do you have me doing so much work on me? I want to hear more about you. Can you write more of that? And then, I was just really shocked because just because she's read these magnificent development books, it doesn't mean she was developing.
Yeah.
And that was an eye opener for me. And that's what I wanted to create. And so I just think on a regular basis, it's easier to judge other people than yourself.
Yeah.
And so receiving feedback means that then do I have to do something with that? And does that make me less than? And that imposter syndrome may bubble up for individuals. And then they might say, oh, they figured me out. So if we just leave it within secrecy, then it will be okay. And it's not. And so, it's that unconsciousness that the only way to know is to engage.
Yeah. It's so true. And one of the things that I've really focused on this year is being more curious. So being more curious about myself, about other people, about business, but because once you're curious about it, it's a non-judgmental space to grow. It's like, oh, I wonder why I think that. I wonder why you think that. I wonder why that's happening over there. And so my little girl and I came up with our motto in life. So we've got our little mission statement, which is to live a life of passionate curiosity and to pass our thoughts, words, and deeds through the lenses of, is it kind? Is it honest? And does it add value? And if we can't say yes to all three, we should go back inward and go, well, what else could we do differently? And where do we go? But it sounds like from all the things you've said and all the work you're doing, you're helping people be curious around the art of the possible, but in a safe environment where it's okay to be curious. And to then make their own informed choice. So you're helping them to not change, but transform and grow their thinking. But they're still in control. And that's the piece that I loved for you, that you've talked so eloquently throughout the show, is it's about making sure that they are in control, because change is the one thing that we are very often fearful of. A trick I often use with people is go, do me a favor, cross your arms. And then uncross them and cross them the other way. And you see, some people can do it. Some people are like so what on earth's happening? But they eventually get there. But it's like, the reason I do that is, how did it feel? Well, it was really uncomfortable. I had to really think about it. I had to be really present. And it's like, that's all change is. You're present and you're intentional about what it is that you're doing, but you're still the one in control. Like you were in control of how you did your arms. And I think it feels like that's what you're creating for people, is that safe space for them to transform. Does that feel fair?
Yes. And that's one of the exercises I love doing. I use that a lot. I'll do it at the end, usually of my training, but that's one of my go-to exercises that I discuss and I talk about change.
Fabulous. I love that. Kendra, it's been such a joy to chat to you, and I've just realised the time, and we're going to get thrown off in a moment because the show will finish, but it shows just what a fabulous conversation we've had. And thank you so very much for sharing your insight. And I've made sure that obviously how to get in touch with you is all in the notes below. But thank you so very much for being such an amazing guest and joining us here on Authentic Achievements and here on USA Global TV and Radio. I look forward to our next conversation.
Likewise. Thank you so much.
Take care. So thank you all for watching, listening, wherever you are. I hope you found that to be as insightful and actionable as I did. It's been a great pleasure to have you with us here. And until next time, take care.
Meet Dr. Jacqueline Kerbeck, President, Founder, and Chief Listening Officer of USA Global TV and Radio. She is a certified life, career, and executive coach. Dr. Jacqueline is the Amazon #1 best-selling author of Behind the Green Screen and Adversity to Awesome. As the listening mentor, she teaches children and their families how to listen at an elevated level through the book series titled The Amazing Adventures of Lady Ella, the Listening Mentor. The Creative Hearts Awakening book series features heart-centric creatives who share their awakening journey. Through the Power of Listening educational course platform, people can get certified as elevated listeners on USA Global TV and radio. Learn how to center yourself and align with nature through the power of nature, plants, and shrines. The Journey of Chakra Psychology course will educate you on the chakras and their meaning. The Intuition of the Heart course will help you understand how to trust your intuition. Learn how to face the shadows of self and understand the impact of following trends and materialism. Set boundaries and ask for permission to help establish better relationships, deeper connections, and more authentic conversations. Take your communication expertise to a higher level with the course for curious humans. After all, we are not robots. Looking to start your own podcast platform? Get everything you need in the Podcaster Pro package with Dr. Jacqueline Kerbeck. How can music, breath, and your voice set you free? Find out with the Power of Listening courses. Dr. Jacqueline is a certified meditation teacher, yoga instructor, and Juice Plus distributor. She will help you create a plan for your healthy lifestyle. As an expert in the art of interviewing with over 3,000 hosted and/or produced live broadcasts, Dr. Kerbeck helps her clients stand out as global broadcasters. Dr. Kerbeck's books are available on Amazon. Start your listening journey by reading. Tune into the Listening Mentor TV show, Fridays on USA Global TV, and learn how listening can be your superpower. Dr. Jacqueline Kerbeck, MBA, DBA, Certified Holistic Life, Career, and Executive Coach, Certified Yoga Sculpt Teacher, Certified Meditation Teacher, The Listening Mentor, Singer-Songwriter, Founder, President, Chief Listening Officer of USA Global TV and Radio. drjacqueline.com. Thank you to all our elevated listeners, team members, animal characters, and co-authors. Contact us at 215-852-9406. Jacqueline at drjacqueline.com.